In today's show, we continue our season preview series with a profile of Deandre Ayton. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You are listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. We've just got one more week. Today's show, you're listening to Friday, September 6th show, and then next week's our final 3-episode week. Then we'll be back to 5 days a week as we tumble towards barrel. Maybe we're not tumbling. We're on steady footing here. Barrel towards the regular season. NBA Media Day or Blazers Media Day is the final Monday in September, and then it's on. And then it really begins. We're going to get right into preseason, and the regular season starts. It's here. So as we gear up for it being here, really and truly, we're continuing our season preview series. It's the Locked On Blazers countdown to tip-off, running down every player on the roster, give you a brief but thorough look at what they'll bring to the Blazers, look at how they performed last season, how they wound up on the Blazers, to talk best and worst case scenarios for this upcoming year, and then we'll finish the episode with a discussion of expectations and a likely role on this season's team. If you've missed the others, this is the second one we've done. The first one we've done is Denny Avdia, that is in your feeds right before this one. Or if you're on YouTube, there is a playlist that has all of your season previews for you, but it's in your feed. Just look for the Denny Avdia season preview if you're an audio listener. Today, we're cashing in from 20 feet and talking Deandre Ayton. Let's get into it. In his first season in Portland, Deandre Ayton arrives via trade in the offseason as part of the larger 3-team Damian Lillard trade along with the Milwaukee Bucks and the Phoenix Suns. Deandre Ayton arrives in Portland just before training camp starts, and on the year he averaged 16.7 points, 11.1 boards, and 1.6 assists. Appeared in 55 games, started every single one of them, playing 32.4 minutes a night. Shot 57% from the floor, 1 of 10 total from 3. You could say 10%, but 1 of 10 total from 3, and 82.3% from the free throw line. But really, Deandre Ayton's season happens in two parts. The first 24 games were bad. There's no reason to sugarcoat it. This was the worst that Deandre Ayton has ever played in the NBA, probably. He was really bad to begin the year. 13.1 points, 10.8 boards, 1.6 assists. He's really bad. He's averaging, 13-11. But 13, 10, 10.8, 1.6 assists, shot 54% from the floor and 77.8 from the free throw line. Did not attempt a three-pointer in those first 24 games. There's a lot of reasons why the first 24 games might have gone wrong. New team, arrived right before training camp. Anthony Simons gets hurt on night 1, so the Blazers' best advantage creator on offense goes down. Malcolm Brogdon's a pretty good half-court player, but he's not as good of a pick-and-roll operator as Anthony Simons, and importantly, he doesn't draw as much attention as Anthony Simons, and the attention that Simons commands on offense, or commanded at least on this particular Blazers offense in a way that Malcolm Brogdon simply did not, really helped Deandre Ayton find his footing. And at the beginning of the year, Scoot Henderson was horrendous. So all of those things, plus, and the transition, Deandre Ayton later told a reporter that part of the transition included him not having a mattress and sleeping for an extended period of time on a air mattress. That reporter did not ask how long Deandre Ayton was sleeping on the air mattress, the question we all truly want to know. But I think importantly, it's just like, he had a weird transition. The mattress thing is mostly just like a bad excuse that you shouldn't tell someone. But like he had a really rough transition, and then like to Portland, he was really stinky to begin the year. Then he has tendonitis in his knee, and he misses like a month. He misses 12 games, nearly a month with tendonitis in his knee, and actually missed 11 games. And then game 12, he's cleared to play. There's a huge ice storm in Portland, and Deandre Ayton doesn't make it to the arena. He is the only player or staff member that did not make it get to the arena for the game. Deandre Ayton misses that one, but then he comes back. He gets out of the ice and he comes back. The Iceman rises. And in the final 31 games, he was just way, way, way better. Honestly, if you really want to juice his stats, he didn't play great the first 2 games he came back because he had missed a month and like was getting his rhythm back. But I'm not going to cut those out. But if you really want to juice him, go ahead and cut those last 2 out and call it the final 29 games of his season. But the final 31 games of the year, 19.5 points, 11.3 boards, 1.7 assists, shoots 58% from the floor and 86% from the free throw line. Just like he's just better. He's just significantly better. And there were moments in that second half of the season when he was like straight up elite at what he does. And I think that's the big thing when you're talking about Deandre Ayton. What does he do, right? Because you can look at the box score. Speaking of Blazers reporters, another Blazers reporter compared DeAndre Ayton to Hassan Whiteside, saying his stats are empty. I don't think DeAndre Ayton's stats are empty. I think they're just really specific to what he does. Like, I think if DeAndre Ayton's is like the way he plays, the quality of his game will show up in the box score. But I don't think he like juices it. I don't think he's someone who has like a 15 and 15 game where where he stunk. I think mostly like you see it in the efficiency with him. But what DeAndre Ayton does is that he takes shots that are created for him. 79.7% of DeAndre Ayton's shots come with one dribble or less, which means that he's not getting the ball and going to work. One dribble or less. He's catching a pass. It's like he's not coming across the freaking timeline, right? He's not coming across half court and setting guys up and running a bunch of stuff. 80% of his shots come with one or fewer dribbles. 0 or 1 dribble. And on those shots, he shoots 61%. He's elite, right? He's elite at that. On the shots where he dribbled a second time or more, but once that ball hits the floor a second time, DeAndre Ayton shot 39.8% on those shots. He doesn't have the juice. And it's not even like a lot of people criticize DeAndre Ayton for maybe not playing hard and not having a motor and not having this like, I don't even think that's it really. That's sort of part of his story. But the real truth to the thing is like, he does not have the individual offensive creation skills to go get himself a bucket. He needs your help. And when you do help him, elite, 61% on one or fewer dribbles. But if he has to dribble a second time, and then he has to dribble after that, and again, these are very few of his shots. He knows the deal. This is less than a quarter of his shots, just 79.7. So the math the other way would be 20.3% of his shots come with 2 or more dribbles, right? And he shoots 40% on those shots. He just can't score unless he's getting set up and put in shots. He's a play finisher. As another sort of data point here, he shoots 46.8% on post-ups, according to NBA.com. Those numbers I shared with you, all courtesy of NBA.com. He shoots 46.8% on post-ups. He's, according to NBA.com, Ayton is 20th in the league in post-up opportunities per game. So he's not like he's not a super high volume guy, like he's not Joel Embiid or Nikola Jokic, but he's not like it's not something he never does. But certainly it's something he doesn't do a ton of, and he shoots just 46.8%. Okay, Mike, what does that mean? Well, for context, Karl Anthony Towns shoots 57% from 57.9%, so 58%. Jonas Valanciunas, 57.6%. Alperen Şengün, 57.4% on a similar number of post touches per game. Like those guys are all 3 other players that are in the top 20 in terms of post touches, and they're significantly better finishers around out of the post. So you can't really dump it into Ayton, right? Like, and you can kind of see that if you dump it into him and he does a quick reverse pivot and gets to his jumper, he can score. If he has to, put his shoulder into someone, he's not nearly as good and as efficient. Like what he does really, really well. And I think the truth of his season looking back is that at the beginning of the year, the Blazers he struggled. And the Blazers didn't have a cohesive plan for here's how we're going to use DeAndre Ayton. It felt like the plan was, well, we'll figure it out, and he'll run a bunch of pick and rolls with Anthony Simons. And then Anthony Simons gets hurt, and it's like Anthony got hurt on night 1 and missed the next 18 games. Like over the next 18 games, that's the crappiest stretch of DeAndre Ayton's season. So DeAndre, he plays in 24 of the first 28 games. So a huge chunk of those are Anthony Simons list, and he stunk. Like Deandre Ayton was bad to begin the season, and then he found I think after he got hurt and kind of spent a lot more time around the team and more time around his teammates, they just had a better understanding of where he wanted the ball. It's like, okay, he's going to operate from in the middle of the court, like from the foul line, basically to the elbows extended. He's not a rim guy. He's not going to be a big time rim runner or lob dunker. He'll get a handful of dunks, and they utilize him some of those half court tip off plays where they'd set back cuts or back screens for him to get dunks. But he mostly wants to operate between 4 feet and 20 feet. He doesn't take threes. He doesn't take layups. He operates in those middle areas, and he's really good at it. And once they kind of figured out what that was, they could dial in on what he does. And to end the year, he's like a 20 and 10 guy. You can, over the final 31 games, he's averaging 19.5 and 11 and shooting 58% from the floor. Like they kind of figured out what he can do. And once everyone was on the same page about what DA does, he looked a lot better. So if we kind of saw the polls with Deandre Ayton, this makes this next segment even more interesting. What's the best case and worst case scenario for Deandre Ayton? That's what we'll do in the second segment. And did we already see it? Let's talk about that in the second segment. Join me there, won't ya? First, though, let me tell you that today's show is brought to you by eBay Motors, and there's 3 words you gotta know if you gotta know about eBay Motors. It's passion, it's drive, and it's patience. It's the formula for winning championships, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. All right. Let's talk best and worst case scenarios for Deandre Ayton as we continue with our player preview, our season preview player profiles. How this works is it is best case scenario within reason and worst case scenario without injury. So we're talking best case scenario, like a realistic best case scenario, and the worst case scenarios are what happens in the lines. We're not talking about people's bodies breaking down. We're talking about what happens on the court. So what's the best case scenario for Deandre Ayton? I think it's pretty simple. It's that he's the guy who finished the season, a guy who's a pretty easy 20 and 10, someone who really understands where his spots are going to be in the offense, and you can go to and count on efficiently to score efficiently from where he scores from, and to put you 2010 money in the box score. The best case scenario for Deandre Ayton is that there's no ramp up period, there's no feeling out period, there's no getting comfortable, and the best case scenario is that the Blazers, not only do they understand how to use him better after one season in the system, but his teammates understand him better, and just the straight up improvement of Scoot Henderson alone should offer another quality pick and roll partner to make Deandre Ayton the best version of himself. So much of what Deandre Ayton's best case scenario is going to depend on his teammates. The best version of him has played with high level pick and roll creators like Hall of Famer Chris Paul. I don't think Scoot Henderson is going to be Hall of Famer Chris Paul in year 2, but an improved Scoot Henderson will have a much higher likelihood of bringing out the best in Deandre Ayton. The best version of Deandre Ayton is the guy who played in the final 29 games of the regular season for the Portland Trail Blazers, someone who is dependable and efficient on offense. I want to say this, though. That isn't the best Deandre Ayton that's ever played in the NBA. Not close, honestly. Even that guy at the end of the year, for DA at the end of the season, was not a defensive force. He was not a defensive force. He was not this two-way beast. We've seen Deandre Ayton be a two-way beast. During the 2021 NBA playoffs, Deandre Ayton rocked. I'm telling you, rocked. Like superstar the second coming of David Robinson, Patrick Ewing, born out in front of us, playing Nikola Jokic as well as anyone has played him over the last few years, really, 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 really hooping, right? He had the alley-oop. He had a game-winning dunk, right? He played with force and he played with purpose, and he was really, really impactful on both ends of the court. He was efficient with what he does, and he was really physical on defense. Efficient with what he does on offense and really physical on defense. I am not sure that player returns this season. Not in this context, not with these teammates, not with the stakes of the Blazers' year. I'm not sure we ever see that Deandre Ayton again, quite frankly, because it's been several seasons since that dude has showed up, right? Where was he in the other 3 years? But I do think there is a best case scenario that is actually better than what we saw at the end of last year, because I don't know if he can get that peak, right? That might be just the best he's ever played, and he might not get back there. And we're maybe talking about 2 months in May is it's just not an NBA season. It's just not the same thing, right? You might not be able to tap back into that. That's normal. At some point, you're going to play your best basketball. But I do think there is a world in which the best case scenario is better than what we saw Deandre Ayton be last year. I do think that there is a world in which he is better on defense, more impactful, more physical, understands how important it is to get to the rim and expands his game and starts. He doesn't have to bomb away from three, but cutting out, I don't think every center needs to shoot threes, but a center who lives off 20-footers, taking a couple 22-footers, and particularly expanding to the corners a little bit for Deandre Ayton, because he's not someone who's like a crazy crasher on offense and mixes it up in there. But someone with his skill set that could be a spacer and take shots that are worth 50% more. There is a world in which he plays more physical on defense, has a more efficient shot diet, and becomes a better version of himself that was a guy who averaged 20 and 10 on 58% shooting to close the end of last year. So what's the worst case scenario? I don't think it's the Deandre Ayton that was around in December of 2023. I think that's actually lower than the worst case scenario. I don't think he's going to revert back to being someone who averages 13 a game. I think he's going to get his numbers. I think there's plenty of opportunity for him. He's very clearly the best center on the roster. He's skilled and talented and has good touch. So I don't think there's a worst case scenario which you get a season of 13 and 10 Deandre Ayton. But I do think there is a worst case scenario that Ayton, with the reality that there are more mouths to feed in a young team that kind of has young players that want to take a step forward. And with Scoot Henderson maybe being a little more assertive on offense, and more Shaedon Sharpe, who basically missed 50 games last year, and more Anthony Simons, who was in and out of the lineup, and Jeremy Grant is going to do what he does and take shots on offense, and sort of the other parts, Denny Avdia, how does he fit in? How much on-ball usage does he get? And the other guys are probably not on the roster, probably not going to take up too many shots, but there are some mouths to feed on offense. And I think there is the worst case scenario is mostly about Deandre Ayton not feeling comfort in his role. And because he doesn't maybe feel comfort in his role, and because his skill set is reliant on other players setting him up, that he's just worse. And that worse carries over to some of his bad habits, which are not playing with a motor. A lot of what holds Deandre Ayton back is skills. Let's be clear. A lot of what holds Deandre Ayton back are his actual, truly his skill set. He doesn't look as comfortable shooting 3-pointers, even though he makes a lot of 19-footers in his life. Those 3.5 feet, it just doesn't look as clean. That's a skill thing. The dribbling is a skill thing. But there are some motor questions with Deandre. You don't always see him playing at his absolute peak effort level, and sometimes, and I think particularly in December of last year when he was just really struggling and then ended up sitting out, I guess November into December of last year, was just really struggling and ended up sitting out with a knee injury. It's you just saw nights where it's he didn't do anything. He played a little bit, but he didn't you didn't feel DeAndre Ayton's presence even a little bit. And I think the worst case scenario is that the sort of reality of a team that is moving forward, maybe without him, causes him to have a little regression. I don't think Ayton has the personality of someone to prove the doubters wrong with incredible force. If he does, he's going to tend towards that best case scenario. If he doesn't, though, and I think we have some evidence over his time in Phoenix when he was like, when they were just over, the two sides were over one another, where it didn't bring the best out of him. And I think there's a real truth in which DeAndre Ayton knows his contract situation this season and next season on the books. And the Blazers just drafted a center overall at 7. And he says, I don't know if did they just draft my replacement? And maybe that doesn't sit right with him. To me, the worst case scenario is more about the best case scenario is more about being smarter about what you do, and the worst case scenario is more about does the mental side of the game, do the soft skills of the game get in the way of what you do well? So let's talk expectations and role for DeAndre Ayton. I think we've set the polls. The whole idea is that everybody lands in the middle, and I think Ayton is likely to land in the middle. That's why I do it this way. But let's talk expectations for Ayton and his role and his future with the team, including talking a little Donovan Clingan, because I think that's undeniable when discussing Ayton's situation. Join me in that third segment, won't you? First, though, I want to tell you that today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Therapy can be incredibly valuable, whether you are dealing with an acute traumatic event, a major trauma in your life, or just trying to navigate the trials and tribulations of everyday life. Talking to a neutral third party, a therapist, regularly can be help you develop the tools to work through your problems, become a better version of yourself, or at least know how to respond to situations or to the major situation in the case of an acute traumatic event in healthier, more positive ways. There are a lot of different options for therapy, and BetterHelp is one of the most affordable and one of the most convenient. So if you're thinking about starting therapy, why not give BetterHelp a try? It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire. You can get matched with a licensed therapist, and then you can switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, still a pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond, and you are still listening to Locked On Blazers. We're talking DeAndre Ayton today, and I want to close the show as we do here on these player previews, talking role and expectations. Here's a simple one. DeAndre Ayton is the Blazers starting center. There is no threat to DeAndre Ayton's minutes on this team. Not a one. Not a one. He played 32 minutes a game last year. I would put him at 31. If I had to guess how many minutes he's going to play this year, he's still going to play a bunch. Donovan Clingan's coming eventually, right? Like he's there, and he's going to be part of the plan in the future. And it's very clear the Blazers, they value him, right? They value him. There was rumors they were going to trade up for him and chase him as high as 3, and they were reportedly elated that he fell into their lap at 7 when the Hornets didn't do what they didn't take him, and Memphis didn't trade up, right? Like Donovan Clingan's part of the future. He's probably not part of the present in any meaningful way that has any threat to DeAndre Ayton. The most minutes I could see Clingan playing like prior to January in like with regularity in an NBA game is like 18. Played 22 a game in college. I don't think he's going to match that in year one in terms of, maybe eventually, because maybe he plays himself into shape and stays out of foul trouble and all those things. But I don't think there's a world in which he plays more than 18 minutes. 18 minutes minus 48, that gets you to your 30. They're going to have to figure out what they do with Rob Williams, but he's not going to eat into DeAndre Ayton minutes, and Duop Reith is there on the sort of the end of that center rotation, and if they need him, Duop will be available, but I can't imagine he plays early in the season, and he's not going to eat into DeAndre Ayton's minutes. There is no threat to Ayton playing at the beginning of the year, which I think is good for the best case scenario thing, right? Like I think that bodes well for him because there's not going to be threat to his minutes. He's going to have the role and the responsibility, and nobody in there to sort of like biting at his heels or whatever it is. I was hoping for a better metaphor than that, but that's the one I landed on. Like it's just he's gonna have every opportunity he wants to go be the best version of himself. Maybe they'll play two big lineups and he'll play a little bit with Deandre Ayton, maybe a little bit with Donovan Clingan, a little bit with Rob Williams, but I don't think they'll do that with any regularity. I don't think that'll be a regular thing they do by any means, based on the way that Chauncey Billups has talked about it, and like also the logic of the NBA. They just can't play it that much. It would be bonkers. So like, DA's going to have his he's going to have the role that he had last season, and so really my expectations for him is that he hopefully can, I think if you've listened this deep into the show, you can tell that I'm not a big Deandre Ayton believer. I think he's fine. I do. I gave you a number in the first segment that Deandre Ayton shot 46.8% on post-ups. He was the 20th most frequent post-upper, used frequency of post-ups, 20th in the league. The 18th most frequent post player in the league was Jusuf Nurkic, and Jusuf Nurkic last season shot 46.8% on post-ups, according to NBA.com. They're just... the new Prince, a lot like the old Prince. They're different in a lot of ways, but there are some things that feel similar. And I don't think DeAndre Ayton is like a bad dude or even like a highly negative player. I want to be realistic about, let me be honest. Let me not realistic. And then I'm going to say some hater stuff. Let me be honest about why I'm not much of a Deandre Ayton believer. I don't think he creates for himself at all. And those numbers that I shared with you, 80% of his shots come on 1 or 0 dribbles. You can't throw him the ball and go get it. He's low efficiency post-up guy. You can't throw him the ball and say, hey, go score. He doesn't pass. He's been a low assist guy. He's under 2 assists. Like, he's never been a high level passer. So you can't run stuff through him at the high post. Like, I don't think he's terrible as a passer, but he's not a good passer to the point where you could like have him be a playmaker, right? Like, he's not like maybe the worst passing big in the league or anything like that, but it's not a positive for him. It's not a positive for him at all. And he doesn't get easy buckets because he's really low frequency, 25th percentile in rim attempts for big men, according to cleaningglass.com. Doesn't get easy buckets right around the rim and doesn't get to the free throw line. Had his lowest free throw rate of his career this season with the Portland Trail Blazers. No easy buckets. He's incredibly reliant on taking mid-range jumpers where he's elite. By some measurements, one of the best mid-range jump shooters in the history of the league in terms of volume. But like, he doesn't create for himself. He doesn't create for others. And the reason that he flirts with league average efficiency is because he's elite on difficult shots. Doesn't get easy stuff. He would, if he got some easy stuff, like if he got free throws and took more layups and maybe mixed in, more than 10 3-point attempts across 55 games during an NBA season, like he could boost. He's already a pretty efficient player, but he's like flirting with league average true shooting percentage because of his shot diet. So that frustrates me a little bit. Like that is the sort of the short, long answer on why I'm maybe not a big Deandre Ayton believer. Like I said, I don't think he's terrible, but the way I felt about Jusuf Nurkic, where I'm like, yeah, he's like an average NBA center. I kind of feel the same way about Deandre Ayton, except that he has like a crazy physical build and seeming like he could be a lot more. And I wonder if the Blazers feel the same way, because when you draft Donovan Clingan, it seems like Deandre Ayton's days are numbered. Based on how the Blazers have operated under Joe Cronin over the last 3 seasons, the idea that Deandre Ayton will be traded by the trade deadline, why would I say that? That's just not how it's not how they've moved. It's not how they moved. I think it's much more likely that if he were to be traded, he would be traded next summer or even the following trade deadline. They're slower on this stuff, right? But he has this year and another year remaining on his contracts. He'll be entering a expiring contract year next season. I don't think he has a ton of value in terms of trade value because his salary number is really big. You saw what Phoenix got for him when they traded, right? They got Nasir Little and Jusuf Nurkic. Like, I don't think Ayton has necessarily helped his trade value since leaving Phoenix. So it's not like he the Blazers are like holding on to him and burning his trade value. It just seems like at some point they need to act. And to me, acting sooner than later, I think you'd rather be early than late with this stuff, would make sense, but I don't think they will. Like I said, there's no threat to his minutes right now, but it would be very odd to draft Donovan Clingan and then, Ayton could be extension eligible and then he could, sign a contract basically from now until he enters free agency with some caveats in there. But like they could sign him they could extend his deal if they wanted. They could sign him to have his bird rights. They could sign him to a contract when he hits free agency. But it seems very unlikely that Deandre Ayton would get a contract from the Portland Trail Blazers. Very unlikely he would get another contract from the Portland Trail Blazers. Why would you draft a center at 7 and then pay a dude in front of him who's not old? Like Deandre Ayton's not old. It's not a timeline thing. He's 25, 26. Like he wouldn't be getting in the way. You'd be buying his prime if you were to pay him for his next contract. It's just, why would the Blazers, why would you spend that kind of investment on two centers, two single position players in the modern NBA? It's weird. So the real, like, how I feel in terms of expectations is like, I don't know how much, conceivably DeAndre Ayton could play another 164 games for the Portland Trail Blazers, plus when they make the playoffs. But conceivably he could play 164 regular season games for the Trail Blazers. But I would bet against it. I bet he plays out this year and they deal with it next year, but he does not have it just seems very obvious that he doesn't have a long-term future here. Is there a world in which DeAndre Ayton absolutely balls out and becomes undeniable? Sure. There is a world in which Ayton exceeds the best case scenario, plays like Patrick Ewing meets David Robinson for 82 games, and the Blazers say, dude, we have one of the 5 best centers in the league. We're not getting rid of him. We'll just guess what you are, Donovan Clingan? You are depth, and they'll move forward like that, right? And there's a world where that happens. I feel like it's pretty unlikely, and I feel like by making the Clingan pick, much like way back when they took Shaedon Sharpe, it was clear the direction they're headed. It's clear the direction they're headed with the Clingan thing. The writing is on the wall, and hopefully that doesn't mess with Ayton too much. I hope for his sake and that he can ball out this year, right? And like have himself a really nice season, because whether he is auditioning for a new team or proving to his incumbent team that he should indeed be part of the future, the way you do that is that you hoop during the regular season. So my expectations for Ayton is that I'm with uncertainty about his future. I hope his present doesn't suffer. All right, that's going to do it for today's show. Like I said, three next week, and then we're back 5 days a week. That's going to be starting September 16th, 5 days a week for 10 months. The season will basically be here at that point. Again, Media Day, the last Monday in September, and we just go. Once we press go on this bad boy, we just go. I want to give a couple quick shout outs. I saw some listeners in the wild. Shout out to listener Nathan and listener Jackie, who I saw at 2 separate undisclosed locations when I was out with my family. It was fun. It's fun to see people that listen to the show. I love the community we've created here. And if you're listening to this, getting geared up for the season, and you're a new listener, I am so happy to have you on board. And if you're a longtime listener to the program and you're like excited for year whatever it is with Locked On Blazers, I am so excited that you are still here with me. If you have someone in your life that you think would like the show, if you know a Nathan or a Jackie out there who might like the show, tell them about it. Tell them it's available on all podcast platforms. It's on YouTube. It's free and always free on all platforms. And that we're going to be rolling 5 days a week very, very soon, and then come back for Monday's show, and we'll keep it rolling. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.